1, 2, 3. Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real Studios to talk about a very important issue, and that is billions and billions of pounds in debt that London has run up that now you, as the taxpayer, are going to be forced to pay. And today, I really want to walk through what the implications of this are, why it's happened, where the money's gone, and how we can fix this in the future. The reason I'm talking about this is because I've been researching this entire subject for the past 3 to 4 months in my bid to become your next mayor of London. And I'm really gone into the numbers and gone into detail because the truth is I've worked in finance. I've run my own business. I've taken classes at the Sloan School of Management. I've been around and I know how to run a business. And when I look at the way the government runs itself, quite frankly, it's appalling. No basic freshman in a management class would ever run this city or this country in a fiscally irresponsible manner that we see, and yet it happens all the time. The truth is, why would we expect our elected politicians to run a city in a fiscally responsible way? They have no management experience, no economic experience, no finance experience, no leadership experience, no entrepreneurial experience. So why would we expect our current mayor of London to know how to run a city with a £17 billion budget and over 27,000 employees? The truth is we shouldn't, and yet we kind of are shocked by how they mismanage this city on a regular basis. And I want to talk about this today. London is now billions of pounds in debt, and you, the taxpayer, are going to be forced to pay. And I want to talk about that today and talk about how the current mayor is literally driving this city into the ground. But I have a solution. I've got the roadmap on the way out. I want to talk about this at the end of Real Deal. So before we get started, I want to get your thoughts. Do you think it's fair that the taxpayer funds governments that go over budget? You, the taxpayer, do you think it's fair that you have taxes on your petrol, tax increases on your tube fares, tax increases on your council tax, your business rates? Is it fair to tax you when our government officials mismanage budgets? That's what I want to ask you right now. Second of all, do you think it's fair to increase congestion charges and raise children's fares in order to pay for mismanagement of the TfL, the Transport for London? Third, I want you to tell me, is it worth the economic damage we're experiencing right now because of lockdown for all of this that's happening? Is it worth the economic price that we're currently paying for the current lockdown situation? And finally, do we need better leadership, and do we need a new solution? So I'm so glad you're here. Again, please leave me your answers. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. We're live everywhere. And I'm going to be literally reading off your specific questions as we go. So type them in. They're going to come to me. There's 3 parts to this, and each part I'm going to be asking for your feedback. And again, give me your thoughts. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Tell me if you think I'm right. Tell me if you think you have a better idea. As your next mayor of London, I am not married to the Labour Party or the Conservative Party or any other party. I want the best ideas. In fact, when I'm going to be the next mayor, I'm open to talking to people from the Labour and Conservative parties to work with them to do what's best for the city. That's what I want to do. I want to do what's best for the 9 million inhabitants of this city. I want to listen to you and serve you in the best way possible, as opposed to doing what our current politicians do, which is they look out for their vested interests, they look out for their own party, and they look out for their own careers. And they just want to be elected and elected and elected. And the truth is they're never responsible for over budgeting because they just tax you, and then the next year they get another chance. Whereas if they were actual entrepreneurs, if they failed to manage the budgets of their company, they would be dead. And that's the real business world that I live in, and that's why I take fiscal responsibility very, very seriously, and I'm going to talk about it today. So looking forward to talking about these topics with you. I'm super excited you're here, so thanks so much for tuning in. First, I want to talk about the obvious, which is the fact that in 168 days, I will become your next mayor of London. And I feel like we're all going to move into City Hall together, all 9 million of us Londoners. And truth is, tens of millions of people from around the world are going to join us on this journey, because I'm confident that when we can show the world how we can turn London around, other cities are going to follow, whether that's Paris or Madrid or Rome, or it could be New York City, Los Angeles, Singapore, Tokyo. Once they see how we crack this code, and again, it's not complicated, but it takes leadership that doesn't have vested interests and that isn't married to a political party, I think we're going to be an inspiration for the world. And so you can see I'm sporting my new Brian for Mayor badge. We've got t-shirts, we got pens, we got coffee cups, and if you head over to brianformayor.london, you can get all your swag, you can support us. We've got brand new policy pages up as well, so you can look at my detailed policies for all of the aspects of what I'm going to do as your next mayor of London. Again, I've gone into the data, I've gone into the details, and you can see exactly how I'm going to get London back to work, put our science first, put our health first, put our education first, and much, much more. Also, you'll be able to volunteer there soon, so sign up for the email list. Donate what you can to the campaign, because we're going up against major parties with tens of millions of pounds in financing, and they're going to throw it all at us in the next few months. Trust me, it's coming. And then finally, I want to say thank you to you, because we are currently in second place and moving into first place as your next mayor of London. The betting agents and the odds makers have now put us there. They've put us well ahead of the Conservative candidate. Again, we have made history already. So thank you all for the support out there. I literally see people honking their horns when they go by me on the streets. I got lorry drivers stopping me. I got everyone under the sun shouting out support. I speak to my taxi drivers every single night. They're all voting for me, and I really appreciate that, and the odds show it. But there still is some easy money to be made out there. So for those of you that want to back me in the odds makers, there's still some crazy people out there given 12-to-1 odds. Obviously, those are easy bets, and we soon plan to move into #1 place in the odds makers, and I'm super excited about that. So watch that and watch how we're doing, but we're super excited to be way ahead, and we're going to move into first soon and replace that Labor candidate and move into first, and we're really excited. So let's talk about what I want to talk about today, which is why London is now billions of pounds in debt, and why you, the taxpayer, is going to pay for it. And I want to talk about numbers right now. But let's start off with TfL, which is Transport for London. And what we see there is our entire transportation network here in London. And what you see is a gaping hole of mismanagement and over budget. And it's shocking, but I'm going to have to talk about the budget shortcomings, not just from the current Labour Party mayor, but I'm talking about the Conservative mayor as well, going all the way back to Boris Johnson. This isn't just a current mayor of London issue. This isn't just a Labour Party issue, although they'd like you to think it's one or the other, and that's why they fight back and forth, why you and I, the citizen and the taxpayer, pay for their mistakes and their mismanagement. So let's get here and let's talk about it. First of all, let's go through a little lesson in history. Back in 2000, there was no mayor of London. And that's an important thing to remember here, because there was also no TfL budget deficit. I know it's hard to imagine, but it was at zero. All right, and this is when the Mayor of London office was conceived, and it was conceived as an experimentation in devolution, giving power to people locally and local officials to make the best local decisions. And we've seen this happen from around the world and in the UK, and I think it's a good decision. You should always give the people in a location the power to make the decisions that are best for them. And we totally back that, but that's when we saw the mayors of London start racking up the budgets for TfL, because what they started doing was they started overspending on TfL and being fiscally irresponsible. And you've seen the headlines popping up over the past few weeks and months. You see Boris calling Sadiq out and saying he's mismanaged the budget. He's bankrupting the TfL. You see the sad faces of our current mayor asking for 1.8 billion pounds, asking for another 2 billion pounds. You've seen more and more headlines of what they've been asking for. Meanwhile, you and I, as the consumer, the taxpayer, and as someone who pays for these networks, are going to pay for this through higher taxes and higher rates. But if you look at the actual figures of what happened, and again, I spend a lot of time every day going through financial details, you get to see what actually happened. And here is actually a slide coming up right now that goes and shows you the debt that's been racked up by our previous mayors. And again, this isn't a Conservative issue or a Labour issue. This is a poor fiscal management issue. And you can see our very first mayor, Ken Livingstone, increased the TfL debt by 1.95 billion pounds. These are big numbers here. Then when Boris got into office, for those 8 years, he increased the debt by another 7.2 billion pounds. And of course, our current mayor of London, is driving our transportation network further into the ground by raising debt another 6.3 billion pounds. And this is, again, very, very hard to believe, these numbers. They're shocking, and these come with interest payments. These come with principal that has to be repaid, and this comes with real ramifications for you and I as taxpayers and people that use these networks, and I'll talk about that shortly. The Telegraph, one of the big newspapers here in London, recently said, quote, Transport for London has already received bailouts totaling 3.4 billion pounds this year, but is warned it will need a further 2.9 billion pounds to keep the capital moving through 2021. They went on to say that these deals came with strict conditions on the London Transport Network. One of those things was raising our congestion charge from an already expensive £11.50 up to £15. But that's not all. They made the congestion charge now from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. They've also made it happen on weekends, and they removed free travel for children. And so now kids have to pay for travel. The congestion charges become extremely harmful. It's also hurting our economy by not getting people into the city. And guess what? Next year, we are expecting fare hikes that are going to be higher than the inflation rate. This is the quote-unquote deal that our current mayor got us, and also raised our debt. These are real numbers with real ramifications, and it means this: the potential total Transport for London debt footprint of 2021 is going to be topping 18 billion pounds. Imagine that, going from zero in 2000 to 18 billion pounds in 2021. What does this mean for you? Well, if you take the simple math of 9 million citizens here in London, that means £2,000 for every man, woman, child, citizen in this city to pay. So if you have a household of 5 people, that's £10,000 that you owe right now for the fiscal mismanagement of your transport network. And I have one question for you. Will that be cash or card? How would you like to pay for that? Because that's what each household needs to pay right now because of the fiscal mismanagement of the current mayor of London and the previous Conservative mayor. And again, I think both of us, you and me, are tired of what we see in the press every day, with everyone pointing fingers, from the Prime Minister to the current mayor of London, saying you caused the deficit. No, you caused the deficit. Meanwhile, you and I as citizens are going to pay for this debt. We're also going to pay for the consequences because our children now have to pay to ride the Transport for London. We're going to see rate increases next year above inflation. But more importantly, we're paying for this with economic damage from this increased congestion charge and more of a mess that Transport for London is going to face going into the future. So that is the current state of events. That's a little bit of a brief history about how we got here. I want to know what you think. Do you think it's fair that the taxpayer funds government mismanagement of budgets? Answer that question right now and tell me why. Do you think it's fair to increase our congestion charges? Do you think it's fair to make our children pay to ride our tubes and buses because of their financial mismanagement? Is it worth the economic damage that we're seeing right now for the current lockdown policies of our government, and why? And finally, do you think we need better leadership and a better solution now? Again, I'm looking for all your comments coming through now on all of the different platforms. Wherever you are, type in a comment now. If you're watching this later, leave me a comment below because I want to watch for these later as well. Again, Instagram, Facebook as well, YouTube, all of those are having comments coming right now, and I want to see what you have to think. It's important to get your feedback as far as what's going on here and find out what's happening here on our social platforms. So type that in as well on Instagram, and also on what's going on with Facebook and YouTube as well. And I'm going to come back to those comments in just a second. And I want to move on to what's actually happening here with the budget deficit. And so it's really important to look at what's actually happening here with the budgets. But before we do that, let me talk to your comments right now. So some incredible people watching now on Instagram and YouTube, and I want to really address your comments. So first of all, thank you for your comments. I'm reading out as many as I can here, almost all of them, but I want to get your feeling, which is great. So Ann Hansen on YouTube says, Brian is bringing the truth to the people, which mainstream media is not doing, and which is important. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. Again, I'm trying to come at this objectively. I'm not married to a party. I don't need a party to approve what I have to say, and I don't need their sanctioning for what I have to say. I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking the truth, and I'm trying to come up with the best idea. I don't care if it's left or right or up or down. I just want the best idea for you as a citizen of London. We've got also someone else on YouTube said, love and blessings, all from Scotland. Please pray for Brian Rose to become your next mayor of London and make the changes we all want to see. Thank you for your courage, bravery to make the changes we all want to see in our world. Love your work, inspiration, bravery. Thank you. That's all for Synchronicity on YouTube. I appreciate it. Cole Owens on Instagram is saying, Brian, I live in Canada and I still want a pin. No problem. We got you. Go to brianformayor.london. We can get your swag. Berg Yolandi from Instagram says, do you deliver swag in South Africa? Yes, we do. We've actually got people all around the world donating to our campaign. We're shipping swag all around the world, and we've got tons of support from people all around the world because this really is a global campaign. If we can show the world what London can do to change, I'm confident that your city can change in the same way. So yes, we appreciate support from all the world, and I appreciate it. Yusra on Instagram says, good luck, Brian. Range Rover Girl on IG says, you got this. I love that name. Tara Rarara on Instagram says, talk about ridiculous lockdowns. Where is our freedom? I agree. Alonso Ramirez and Maurice Castillo on Instagram and Shinjeki all say, Brian for mayor. I appreciate that. Sant Augustin on Instagram says, the approach is not worth the economic price. We don't need more parties telling us what we need. I couldn't agree with you more. We are really seeing how party politics is killing everything we do here. Black Abran on Instagram says, we've got money for war but can't feed the poor. I agree with you. Voice on MC on IG says, it's not fair. We got 16 billion pounds going to defense. Labor is basically conservative now. The whole lot needs to go. I appreciate that. Trevor Nelson says, keep up the great work, amigo. Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate you. We got someone on YouTube that's saying, you got this, Brian. Domain Admin on YouTube says, love you, Brian. Thanks for changing the world. 200 miles per hour on YouTube says, all for you, brother. Hypno Mama says the north of England deserves the same respect as London. And again, we really appreciate our friends in Manchester and Liverpool and all of our friends in the north that are fighting a good fight up there, and we're wishing you lots of luck. Leslie on YouTube says, we hope you win. Happy to see you are running. And Tony on Instagram says, I saw you running in Vicky Park yesterday. You did. I love this city. I love exercising. It's an incredible environment. You know, I walk the walk and I talk the talk. I'm out there exercising every day because it's important that we do that for our health, and that's in my entire Health First policy. And finally, Andrew Pretty on YouTube says, we need leaders, full stop. Current leaders are not leading anyone anymore. I couldn't agree more with you, Andrew, and thank you for your comments. Again, I really appreciate everybody's comments. Keep typing them in. I'm going to come back 2 more times here and get your questions, your answers to the questions. And again, my questions are this. Is it fair that you, the taxpayer, funds government's mismanagements of their budgets? Tell me why. Second of all, do you think it's fair to increase our children rates and our congestion charges to pay for their own fiscal irresponsibility? Third, do you think right now that the lockdown is worth the economic price to pay? And finally, do you think we need better leadership? And do you think we need a new solution? All right, I want to talk about my second point here. And again, I want to talk about budgets. I want to talk about the mismanagement by our leaders of our money. Let's be clear. This is our money. This is the money you work very, very hard for. It comes out of your paycheck as a tax. The government is charged with using it responsibly. They are not charged with using it as they see fit. And I have a real problem when they go and overspend the money that both you and I work very, very hard for, that we could be spending on our families, that we could be spending to build businesses, that we could be spending to create jobs and create a better economy. When we give the government that money, we use the opportunity to invest it back in the economy. So they better be spending it responsibly. And that's why I have real problems with what's happening here with our current mayor of London. You've seen the headline, and I'll put it up right now. The mayor has said that the coronavirus has left a 500 million pound black hole in London's finances, but we know that's not true. Blaming it on the virus is the wrong thing to do here. And so let's look at what's happening right now with the current budget for the mayor of London. So recently, the Labour mayor outlined 500 million pounds worth of cuts to public services, okay? This is what he's cutting. Fire services. They are being already drastically cut to a service that was already deprived of an adequate budget. And we've seen what happens when you cut budgets from the fire department. And what was highlighted there is the tragedy that we saw happen at Grenfell. That was one of the problems that happens when you cut fire service budgets. Next, we see police services are being drastically cut. We've seen a recruitment freeze for most vacancies in the police department, and we've seen financial reserves that are being deployed to keep police numbers where they're at now at 32,400. The budget cuts alone in policing that the current mayor has just made are the equivalent to the salaries of 1,681 police officers. Imagine that. Currently, with knife crime going through the roof, with our mayor just recently celebrating the 100th death of one of our teenagers due to murder in this capital from a lack of policemen on the streets. He is now cutting the budget that would cut another further 1,681 police officers on the street when we need to be increasing those numbers. That's one of the things he's also doing. He's also cutting transport projects. He's put on hold currently the critical repair of the Hammersmith Bridge, which is a major artery here in London that is killing our economy by having that backed up every single day. He's also put on hold the Canary Wharf to Rotherhithe ferry service. He's put on hold the Sutton Tram extension and the Bakerloo Line extension, which is crushing our transportation system. And again, the Hammersmith Bridge closure is causing untold misery to hundreds of thousands of commuters who travel from southwest London every single day. This is what happens when the mayor starts cutting the budget. And one of the Greater London Associate Conservative leaders that works with our current mayor every single day, Susan Hall, and there's a picture of her here, has gone on to speak frankly about what the mayor is doing right now. And she says, quote, "As usual, Sadiq Khan is treating this crisis as a press opportunity to attack the government rather than a problem he is responsible for solving." And she goes on to say, his gambit is that by playing the part of a quote-unquote poor mayor and publicly calling for ministers to step in and bail him out again, Londoners will not notice that he is the one choosing to drop the axe on the vital services that keep our city safe. And Ms. Hall went on to add, quote, I will pay Sadiq Khan one compliment when it comes to his mayoralty. He has achieved something remarkable. And she says, quote, he has turned the mayor of London from being one of the most powerful roles in the country into a broke office looking for a discount city hall. And she went on to say, quote, sadly, it's Londoners who are paying the price. But I would go on to say something about you, Susan Hall, and your Conservative Party. And I would say this, sadly, Susan, it's actually your own Conservative government that put us here with billions and billions of pounds in debt in our Transport for London with your candidate, Boris Johnson, as mayor. So this finger-pointing thing, I'm not on board with. I'm not on board with it from you, Susan, with our current mayor, or with Boris Johnson, because we pay the price. And while we're on this point of pointing fingers, today the Conservative government here in Britain just announced that they are freezing the pay for 4 million of our key public service and sector workers. 4 million. Their pay has been frozen. They will not get their normal adjustments for inflation. And so both parties need to take responsibility here for squeezing the essential services. And honestly, when I read the budget that our current mayor proposed this week, with a drop of 493 million pounds in spending, it was hard to watch and hard to listen to and hard to read. He's squeezing crucial services. He's even squeezing his own Green New Deal that was supposed to make this city greener. He's slashing the budget for that. And this all is because of his own fiscal irresponsibility. But then again, why would we expect a man who has spent his whole career as a local authority politician to understand anything about management, about leadership, about finance, about entrepreneurship, about any of this? And yet we're giving him a 17 billion pound budget. We're giving him a staff of 27,000 people and expecting him to run this in a fiscal manner. And I'll say one thing. When they fail year after year after year to balance their budgets, what do? We re-elect them and we give them another job. So we're giving them the wrong message. And like I said, in the entrepreneurial world, in the real world where I live, if you fail to balance your budget, you get eliminated. And that's what we plan to do on May 7th. And so I want to get your thoughts here. What do you think of these gaping holes in the budget? What do you think of this massive fiscal mismanagement, not just by the current Labour government here in London, but by the Conservative government, formerly as mayor and currently in our national government? Do you think it's fair? The taxpayer funds should be used for governments that go over budget? Do you think it's fair to increase congestion charges? Do you think it's fair to increase fares for our children? Do you think it's fair to slash budgets for our fire department? Do you think it's smart to slash budgets for our police department? Do you think it's fair to slash budgets for our environment and our green initiatives? Tell me what you think in the comments right there. Do we need better leadership, and do we need a solution? I want to go to your comments now. And again, whatever platform you're watching me on now, please give me a comment, give me a shout out wherever you are. We're looking at Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, anywhere that you're following us right now. And some great comments coming in here. Really appreciate these coming in. And it's fantastic to just see how many people are really out there really talking about what's going up here. And again, some great comments people are saying about what's happening here, and I'm just waiting for my feed to come in here. Again, comment just coming in here from Instagram says, hope you win, Brian. Happy to see that you are in the running. And it's great to see that you are now dropping this. We got Kevin on Instagram saying, it's not fair for children to be charged for travel. Families spend enough in London, and I agree with that completely. We've got Great to London on Instagram says, quote, it's not fair. UK government, where is the leadership? I donated to your campaign because I'm confident that you will lead other cities to succeed. And that's our plan, to do that right now. We want to show you real leadership out there. I've got Malaysia. Thomason says, quote, the real Brian, go get him and make this country great again. I appreciate your comments. I got Chrissy Morrissey on Instagram says, what would be your plan, Brian? Hold on a second. Let me just find this right there. She says, what would be your plan, Brian, on the debt that is mounted up? And we would get London back to work. We would leverage our incredible city's financial muscle. And that's what we would do. There are solutions for chipping away at this debt. But the biggest solution is something I want to talk about at the end. And that is simply, we need to get London back to work. The best solution to all of this is to get the city back to work, because that increases fares for our tube. That increases all of the output, that increases tax revenues, that increases everything. But it's something that our leaders don't want to talk about, and they're crusading for these lockdowns. Some other great comments coming in there. Chrissy also says they have no clue at all. We need to get to the root of the problem, educating our youth about knife crime. I couldn't agree with you more. We've got big changes we need to make in our police department and our education of our youth. Blondish Me on Instagram says we need brave mayors everywhere. Glasgow needs you. Thank you so much. I'm giving you lots of love and support to our brothers and sisters up north. Chloro Instagram says we need the Sutton Tram. We need these transportation policies, projects like the Sutton Tram, like the ferries, like the Hammersmith Bridge. These are crucial to our policies. City Trader on Instagram says, quote, businesses shouldn't be shut down, and UK businesses and the self-employed should have tax breaks. I couldn't agree with you more. We've got to get this economy going. That's how we're going to solve all these problems, and I'll get to that at the very end. We've got Who's it Karif on Instagram says, what is your solution, Brian? And the truth is that I want to get London back to work, and I'll talk about that shortly. Sergenius on Instagram says, obviously you are the GOAT, Brian for mayor. I appreciate the GOAT term. That's for greatest of all time. It's great support, and I appreciate you. Trust me, once we get into office, we are going to show what it looks like to bring greatness back to this city. I promise you that for sure. We've got Kebelo on YouTube says, get London back to work. You know what I'm talking about. Thank you. We've got Mac Consultancy on Instagram says, we should only lock down the over 50s and 60s and allow everyone else to get on with life. I agree with you. We've been talking about this here at London Real. I've been speaking to Professor Martin Kulldorff of Harvard Medical School, who wrote the Great Barrington Declaration. I had Luke Johnson, a prominent entrepreneur here in the hospitality group, who said the same thing yesterday. We know we're right on the right course, and yet, what does our current mayor do? He is crusading for a lockdown. He wants to shut everything down, and yet then he whines and complains when his transportation infrastructure goes over budget, and he blames our prime minister. Is that the way to run a city? I think not. That's why we're going to get London back to work. Some other comments here. Again, I really appreciate them. I want to try to get as many as possible. We've got Jamie Snell on Instagram says, decentralized power and decision-making. Local communities will take care of themselves. We do not need centralized government control. I couldn't agree with you more. That's why the mayor of London exists, but that's why we have to make sure the London mayor is held fiscally responsible, and that's what I'm going to do as your next mayor. We've got Major Paper on YouTube that says, I invite Boris to come and bench press some weight at the gym before he makes those nonsensical decisions? That's a great question there. I appreciate that, Major. And we got Alexander on YouTube says, Mr. Rose, will you continue London Real if elected? And how can I be a campaign volunteer? First of all, anybody can go to brianformayor.london right now, sign up to our email list. We're going to send you a message on how you can be a volunteer. Also, you can get your swag and donate to our campaign. What I will do is I will continue London Real because I want to speak to you every single day, and I want to use this platform as a way of listening to you every day. Because if I'm not listening to the citizens, then I'm just like one of these other jokers, right? Who's worried about their own career. My job is to serve you and to listen to you and to repeat those over and over again. So yes, we will continue this. Dondra on YouTube says, save London. And Andrew on YouTube says, the current mayor has 0 qualifications. And I couldn't agree with you more. All right, I want to make my third point here. And I really appreciate all the comments coming in, and I appreciate all the support. And thank you for being here. Again, leave me your comments right now and tell me what you think, because I'm going to read them off for the last time. So wherever you are around the world watching, type in a comment right now and tell me what you think. Let's talk about my final point, and this is the one that quite honestly is still hard for me to believe because of the scale of the number. And you'll see this headline right here on screen, and I'll read it for you. Sadiq Khan demands more than £29 billion from our chancellor. And the truth is this. Our current Labour mayor has actually asked for £30 billion more from our government to cover housing and random pop-up policies that he brings out. He's asking for this large amount of money. But the truth is, when we dig into it, we find out that the current mayor has actually not got around to building the subsidized housing that he promised for us almost 5 years ago. And so let's look into what the mayor has actually done when it comes to housing and what he wants for the rest of this £30 billion. And I'm going to go back to Susan Hall again, our conservative commentator, and she works with this man every single day. She's watched what he's done for the past 5 years, and she says, quote, the government has consistently invested in London and has bailed Sadiq Khan out when Crossrail was repeatedly delayed on his watch and Transport for London went bust. Despite a £4.82 billion investment from ministers, the mayor has failed to build even half of the 116,000 affordable homes he promised by 2022. And when we look into it, after 3 years, our mayor has only started building 34,515 homes. Mrs. Hall goes on to say, quote, the problem with Sadiq Khan is whenever the government gives him money, he fails to deliver. And she goes on to say, quote, Londoners expect their mayor to get a good deal from government, but Khan's consistent failure to deliver weakens our city's case. And she finishes by saying this, quote, without a mayor that can deliver and work with the government, Khan is depriving our city of future investment. And this is a powerful line that Susan Hall says, and she is right about this. And what the bailout mayor will cost you is this. The incumbent mayor has repeatedly called for more bailouts to cover the mismanagement of his city. And based on the latest data, per person, it is estimated that for every single person in this city, this includes children, by the way, the debt repayment of all of the policies I mentioned, I'm putting this on screen right now. Look at these numbers. They are hard to believe. The Transport for London tube debt in itself comes down to £2,000 per person in this city. That's every single person, including women, children, elderly. The cost of this housing debt that the mayor is asking for and other pop-up policies of the £30 billion is costing each one of our citizens £3,333.33. The total cost to you right now, each individual citizen, is £5,333.33. And that means for a family of 5, that's £26,000, £666.65. £26,000, £666.65. That's what your household needs to pay. And again, I'll ask you this question, will that be cash or card? That is a lot of money that you have to pay, not because of the systems required for government, because of the mismanagement of your elected officials. And that comes to one conclusion that I have, and a lot of you are already putting it out on your comments here, which is this. Our elected leaders are massively underqualified to run the Greater London Authority. They cannot handle a government with a budget of 17 billion pounds. They cannot handle a staff of 27,000 people. When you look at these numbers, if they were a corporation, this would want to be one of the top 10 listed corporations on the London Stock Exchange. And who do we have running it? Somebody with no understanding of business, with no long-term strategy, and with no long-term vision. They have no experience in economics, no experience in management, no experience in leadership, no experience in finance, and no experience in deal-making whatsoever. The current mayor of London has watched the most turbulent period in London history, and he's blown it. He's ruined our finances, from housing, from our police department, from our fire department, to our transportation, to even his own green initiative. He's ruined it, and he's driving this city into the ground. The truth is this: why would we expect this man to be able to run this city? He has no experience. You need someone that has experience in the past 20 years when it comes to finance, when it comes to deal making, when it comes to economics, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to leadership, and when it comes to management. And that is why I plan on being your next mayor of London. I have experience in all of these aspects. I have run businesses. I worked in the City of London in finance for 10 years. I know how to deal with these projects. I know how to hold people accountable. I know how to balance a budget, and I know how to run something that's fiscally responsible. And I'm not going to ask you as a taxpayer to pay for my failings or the people that work underneath me. What we need is leadership. We need accountability, and we need leaders that stop blaming other people for their own failings. We need people to step up and take ownership for their own failings, and that's what I plan on doing as your next mayor of London. The beauty of me not working for one of the parties in the two-party traditional system is that, first of all, I don't need their approval for my policies. Second of all, I will take the best idea. I don't care if it's a Conservative or Labour or Lib Dem or Green Party. I don't care what it is. I want the best idea that does the best things for the citizens of London, period. So I'm not married to any of these ideas. And also, I am free to be truthful about what happened in the past. I can criticize anyone I want because they're not part of my own party. And I can call out failings of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, and I can make the right decisions on how we move forward. So I want to get your comments and feedback for the last time on this Real Deal. Tell me right now. Type a comment, whoever you are, even if you've never commented before, I want to see you in here. Do you think it's fair that taxpayer funds are used to bail out our government's mismanagement and fiscal irresponsibility? Put that in there right now. Second of all, do you think that congestion charges should be raised? Do you think that our children should have to pay for their own transport? Do you think that fire departments and police department budgets should be cut? Do you think that our own green initiatives and environmental initiatives should be cut because of our leaders' fiscal irresponsibility? Type that in right now. Tell me, do you think that, and why? Next, do you think this lockdown that we're experiencing right now is the best decision, and is it worth the economic damage? And finally, do you think we need better leadership now, and why? And I want to get your comments here. There's a ton coming through here, and I really appreciate that. We got Davey on Instagram that says, we need leaders who don't have their hands in corporate pockets. Brian, I'm praying for you to get in, and I appreciate that, Davey. And let me be clear. Many of our leaders in Conservative and Labor have corporate sponsors. If you look closely, you can see them in their ads. We have no lobbyists. We have no corporate sponsors. I have one aim in mind as your next mayor of London: to make the best decisions for the citizens, period, and balance our budgets. Wes Burns on Instagram says, top man Brian, you need to be prime minister, never mind mayor. I appreciate that, Wes, but let's focus on London first. That's what I want to do. Another fellow on Instagram says, May 6th is too far away. I know what you're saying. We got 168 days, but trust me, it's going to go by like that. Prolific Trader on Instagram says, we need you, Brian. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Stacy on Instagram says, London is lucky to have you, Brian. Thank you very much. Honestly, I'm lucky to have London. I appreciate this city very, very much. We've got Jono Star on YouTube saying, you got my vote. You are running independent. It's a question. I am proudly independent. Yes, I am. We want to be independent. That's what we want to do here because we want the best independent decisions. We got Dane Martin on YouTube says, I'm from up north, but I really hope you get into the mayor's office in our beautiful capital. Thank you, Dane. I appreciate you. We've got Ishak Rahim on YouTube saying, don't stop with London. Singapore needs you. I appreciate Ishak, but the truth is this. If we can show London how it's done, if we can show real leadership in London, if we can return this city to be one of the greatest in the world, then I'm confident that other cities will follow us and they'll use our policies. So that's my plan. We got Anna OB on YouTube saying, you are my mayor. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you. Bella Parker on YouTube said, so Brian, what is your plan to fix all this up? Will you open up the London road Sadiq has closed? Yes, I will. I'll talk about that very shortly. MJ on YouTube says, get after it, big dog. Rooting for you, real Brian Rose 10X. Thank you, MJ. I appreciate you. Sienna V. Rose on Instagram says, the solution is so simple. It is, but we have such bad leadership, but we have to change. She says, you standing for mayor is the best news I've heard all year. Thank you, Sienna. The truth is this. The policies are simple. They're simple. We all see them, and yet our current leadership, they aren't able to execute on them because of their vested interests, because of their mismanaged policies, and that's why we need new blood, new vision, and a new direction. I appreciate your thoughts on there. Chrissy on IG says, now that's a true mayor. Thank you. Mikey Wooten says, this is what a real mayor who has the people's interest at heart would do. That's the truth. That's what we want to do here. Fode on Instagram says, you need to save the city, sir. And finally, we got Ian Brixton Boy on Instagram says, our current mayor just wants to win points that will aid him in his future political career. Sadly true. As a personal trainer, Ian says, and professional athlete, we have no backing from our leaders. Our mental health is going downhill and we're losing money. I couldn't agree with you more, Ian. It's sad to see, and we all pay him for this right now. We cannot blame the COVID pandemic for these failings. We just can't. When you actually look into the data, this city has been mismanaged, not just for 1 year, for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years. And it's about time that we start showing leadership and getting people to really go in here and make the changes that we need. So I want to give you my final thoughts. What we see here is unacceptable. Our police force cannot be compromised. Our fire brigade cannot be compromised. Our green initiatives cannot be compromised, and our transport infrastructure cannot be compromised. I will not tolerate that. Next, I must say this. Bailouts are not the answer. Bailouts are not the answer. It's never the right answer to ask the government for more help. The solution is getting London back to work. We need to make decisions based on our geography and based on our demography to get London back to work safely. So let's protect our elderly. Let's protect those most vulnerable, but let's get the young people back to work and let's get this city back to where we don't have these budget deficits. Again, it's very, very important. As your next mayor of London, I will focus on the economy. The economy is the bedrock of all of this. With a strong economy, we have tax revenues. I don't need your money to pay for the transport. When the economy is running, you're making money. You can pay for all the infrastructure build that you need. You can help build businesses that will create more tax revenues. You can help provide the solutions to our mental health issues, to our lost generation. Yesterday in the studio, I had Luke Johnson on the show, who is the former chairman of Channel 4, who's the former chairman of Pizza Express, who's the chairman of Risk Equity Partners, who runs some of the biggest hospitality venues in the country. And he said to me, Brian, quote, the economy is us. You cannot divorce the two or you will pay a steep price. And I couldn't agree with Luke more. Every single business leader that I've spoken to here at London Real over the past few weeks, which by the way, is more business leaders than our current mayor or our prime minister has spoken to, I guarantee. So I have my finger on the pulse with what real business leaders are saying. Luke said to me, he said, Brian, economists don't create jobs, entrepreneurs create them. And he said, this campaign of fear that our government has led is wrong. He said, we need to stop the fear. We need to find solutions to get people back to work because it's the entrepreneurs that create jobs. And I couldn't agree with Luke more and all the other leaders that I've spoken to, from Simon Woodruff, one of our Dragon's Den members, to Luke Johnson, to all of the other entrepreneurs that I've spoken to, from Alan Sugar to the rest. They all say the same thing. We must get London back to work. And not only can we have both our health and our economy, but we must have both We need to have our citizens' health and our businesses working for us, which is why as your next mayor of London, I pledge to you to get London back to work. And again, these aren't just empty words and promises. I've got a specific bullet point plan, and you can see all of my policy plans in detail on my website at brianformayor.london. You can go there right now and read them, and I'm going to have more details and more videos coming soon. But my Get Back to London work plan of attack looks like this. First, we create a 6-month post-lockdown congestion charge holiday by removing these prohibitive taxation in order to promote as many visits to London as possible and boost the economy. I disagree with the mayor who wants to increase the congestion rate from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night to weekends. How are we going to get our business back if you do that? I'm going to create the congestion charge holiday, but I'm not going to stop there. Next, I'm going to create a 6-month post-lockdown business rates holiday. We're going to slash business rates to 0 across the board for all small and medium-sized enterprises in Greater London for 6 months. That's how you kickstart the economy. Next, I'm going to stimulate key sectors with expanded financial packages, specifically in restaurants, cafes, nightclubs, retail, and the hotel sector here in London. Next, I'm going to encourage the return of office workers to the world's financial capital by speaking with the top global financial services companies on how we can safely bring back 25% of their office workers. I know we can do that. I've worked at these banks. We need to speak with these leaders and find out what's it going to take to get these people back in the offices. I was speaking with my taxi driver last night, Ahmed Rage. His last name is R-A-G-E. I said Rage, that's a cool name. He said it's Rage. He's from Somalia. He's been here for 20 years. And I said, Ahmed, let me guess, you've got no more fares in the city of London. He said, Brian, it's dried up. Nobody's working in this city. All the finance people have gone home. I said, Ahmed, I know these people. I can speak with these CEOs and we can find a way to get 25% of their workers, their younger workers, safely back in this city, and we can kickstart the economy. But what does our current mayor of London do? He crusades for a lockdown. He's been begging to shut this country down for months, and he's going to keep it locked down for the next months and probably years if he can have his way. He's going to ask you for billions of pounds more in taxpayer spending, and he's going to blame it on our prime minister. And the same record's going to repeat itself for years and years again. We've got to break this cycle. Again, I want to further on with my Get London Back to Work plan. I'm going to implement new science-based protocols for retail establishments to deal with COVID-19 responsibly, but stay safe in business. I'm going to safely open up our theaters, museums, concert arenas, and stadiums. I've had people like John Morgan here in this studio from the Theaters Trust to talk about how we can open up theaters. Did you know for every £1 someone from the UK spends at a theater here in London, they spend 82 additional pounds in the capital on taxis, on restaurants, on drinks, on retail expenditures? All we have to do is get him back in here, and John Morgan has the answer. He just needs to be empowered by the Mayor of London. Next, I want to allow outdoor seating and the use of our streets for all retail and hospitality businesses here in London. Again, I was out speaking with Peter Dorr-Smith of the retail establishment Caffeine recently on the streets, and he said, Brian, I'm trying to get the Council of Westminster to allow me to have these tables on the streets. They want to charge me £2,000 a month. That's ridiculous. We need to empower these leaders, not charge them, and allow them to put these outdoor seating so they can stay in business and keep these jobs in our city. Peter, I want to empower people just like you. Next, I want to get our children back to school, which is going to promote all of the surrounding businesses and infrastructures around our schools, around our teachers, around the school supplies, everything around there. And I want to do that because that's going to also promote the greater economy. So again, these are my specific Get London Back to Work policies. And I'll challenge you to do one thing. Find me one other candidate for mayor that has detailed policies like I do to get London back to work. And on that same note, let me ask you another question. Those people currently running for mayor, they've had 20 years to work on their policies, and yet I don't see any intelligent policies. I've had 3 months and I've got detailed policies on exactly how we can get this city back to work. And it doesn't stop there. I've got science first, health first, education first, family first. I've got detailed policies on exactly how we can get this city back functioning again. And look, this all comes down to one thing. I love London. I've always loved this city. Ever since I first visited here back in 1987, when my mom brought me here from San Diego on, yes, your typical European vacation holiday. I was here with my brother and sister, and I love this city immediately. When I first moved here in 1997 to work in finance in the city, I fell in love with this city. I love this city so much, I called my show London Real after this city because it means so much. My two sons were born in this city. I'm a citizen of Britain and have been since 2007, and I plan to be buried in this great city. But I'm tired of watching our current crop of politicians run this city into the ground. I will not accept it anymore, and what I want to see is this one simple thing. I want to make London a world-class city once again, period. I know I can do it. I know I have the solution. I know exactly the policies to put into place, and what I need is your help to make this happen. So please, leave me your comments below and tell me if you think of my solutions here. Tell me if you think we should allow this current crop of politicians with their vested interest, with their lobbyists, with their one goal in mind, which is to get elected over and over again. Do you think we should allow them to run our budgets into the ground, billions of pounds in deficits, and to ask you as a taxpayer to pay up to £26,000 for your household to handle their mismanagement just because they can't hold people accountable? They have no leadership, they have no entrepreneurial experience, they have no management experience. I don't think it's fair. I think it's time we need lead London into a new direction. We need new blood. We need someone who's not vested in this current two-party system. And I am confident that I can be your next mayor of London. When we move into City Hall on May 7th next year, we're going to be moving in together as a group, and we are going to make this city world-class once again. I promise you. We're going to show the world what a great city looks like. We are going to be ahead of New York City, of Los Angeles, of Tokyo, of Madrid, of Berlin. We're going to show them what a great city looks like. I know we can do it. So thank you so much for your time. Leave me your comments below. Forward this video to someone who needs to know this message. Go to brianformayor.london. Show your support. Get your button. Get your t-shirts. Donate to our campaign. Volunteer. And again, I'll say this last sobering note. This is going to be a difficult fight because both of these parties have massive vested interests. They've got hundreds of years of history. They've got tens to hundreds of millions of pounds they're going to throw at us. But I'm confident that us together, we can beat them because the best idea always wins. So let's get in for this fight. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much for the energy, for all the emails, for all the comments on social, for all the horns being honked on the streets, for you that come up and shake my hand. I appreciate you. Your energy means so much to me. We're going to do this together. We're going to make London world class once again. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week on Real Deal. At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.